Welcome back to the She Found Motherhood podcast. It's Dr. Sarah here, and today I'm chatting with Aimee Burton from Be Free Financial Services. Aimee and I have a really important conversation about a lot of the important things that should go into planning when you're thinking about getting pregnant and starting a family. We talk about life insurance, education savings, debt management, and so much more. And now, maybe you've already started your family and you haven't thought about this stuff. It's not too late to start. And Aimee provides so many juicy nuggets and really helpful information that I wish I had when we were starting our family. We'll get right into the podcast after this quick message. Welcome to the She Found Motherhood podcast. We are doctors Sarah and Alicia, maternity physicians and moms who have been through it all. We want to empower you with knowledge so you can have the best pregnancy, birth, and postpartum experience you can.
She Found Health and She Found Motherhood is meant for general medical information only. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. This information does not apply to every situation. If you have questions or if you've received different advice, please contact your healthcare provider. Always seek the advice of your physician or another qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. The views expressed by She Found Health and She Found Motherhood and our guests are not representative of any of the institutions with which we are affiliated. Some of our podcast episodes are sponsored so that we can keep getting great info out there to you, our listeners. We only partner with companies that we truly believe in. Some of our links and suggestions may be affiliates, and we would appreciate you using them to help fund this important work. Now let's get to it.
Good morning, Aimee. Welcome to the She Found Motherhood podcast.
Good morning. So excited to be here with you, Sarah.
I know, and I'm so excited to have you. So typically I just start by asking people to introduce themselves a little bit. So tell us who you are and how we connected to talk about financial planning for new families, new parents today.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here. It's a topic that has become a big passion for me fairly recently, honestly, although I've been interested in financial stuff for many years, read a lot of books in my 20s and 30s. But I am a mom. Currently live on Vancouver Island in Mill Bay. I did grow up in the Kootenays and then made my way out to the coast here and had my first child in 2020. So that was an interesting year to be pregnant and giving birth, but it was all amazing and smooth. And it wasn't until probably about 6 months into that journey of motherhood, having a baby and all of that, that I started to really think, we need to get a few financial things figured out, my husband and I. And the process of going through that was somebody that was really helpful, really awesome. I learned a ton. That actually triggered for me an interest in pursuing this as a career. And I think when we become moms, it puts a lot of different perspectives. Our values, like everything comes up to be reevaluated as to what's the most important for us. And so what I really wanted, Dr. Sarah, at that time is I wanted to still be able to pursue a career, still be able to have that side of myself, that professional side of myself, but also be a very present mama. So I was looking for something flexible, and this was a great opportunity. So I got my financial license during the year 2021, and then 2 years in, and I'm just loving helping families and business owners and new parents, especially.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. And it's so important. I think I remember my kids are older now, but someone was like, well, you have to have a will. And I was like, what? But I'm so young, right? And there's all these things that like nobody actually tells you about. It's not like it's in like when you go see your maternity care provider, they're like, oh, and do this, right? There's all these like life things that you don't necessarily think about.
Yeah, totally. You're like, okay, how do I take care of this thing? How do I keep it alive?
Yeah.
How do I feed it? How do we get some sleep
Yes,
around
totally.
here?
Totally.
Like financial stuff is at the bottom of the list.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure.
And then I think the other thing is that too, for some people, like we have this perception that in Canada, everyone gets maternity leave, right? And you get paid maternity leave, so you don't have to worry about it. But many people, like myself included as a physician, we're not employees. So we don't get like that 12 to 18 months of maternity leave and benefits. And many other people don't, right? Like independent contractors, self-employed people. And so for some people, it goes above and beyond just thinking about like the basics, but it also goes like into, okay, how can I financially afford to have a baby?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. It's a huge thing for so many professionals. Yeah. And even if you could get maternity leave, for a lot of professionals, the amount that you get paid is pennies. It's like literally nothing almost.
I know.
to be able to support all your lifestyle or whatever. So
Oh
yeah,
my
there's a lot of planning that can be done beforehand if you are blessed to be in that position to be able to plan ahead. Or the situation that you have to find yourself in and work your way through.
Yeah. So if you were speaking to a young family that was pregnant, but didn't really have an approach to their finances, what would be the sort of guiding principles or the key things that you would take people through?
Yeah, such a good question. If a family is preparing, and we all have to prepare for a baby in many ways, right? We need to get certain gear and prepare for birth and all of those things. But finances are such a big thing. And I think it's so important to think about ahead of time if you can, because the last thing you need when you're a brand new parent is stress, right? Is like
Mhm.
additional stress. And so having a few things figured out ahead of time is going to make your life way easier. So I tell this to everyone. This is not advice just strictly for parents. This is advice for every single
Yeah.
person who uses money in the world, which is pretty much everyone, is that we need to know we need to know our numbers, right? We need to
Yeah.
understand our cash flow. That's like the most foundational piece of the puzzle is how much money is coming into our household, how much money is going out. And ideally, obviously, the amount coming in is more than the amount going out because then you have some wiggle room, right? And you're not living in that cycle of paycheck to paycheck. So it's honestly, it just takes a little bit of time, a little bit of effort. There's so many apps nowadays, or even your bank might do this for you where it tracks your everything you spend money on. It categorizes things for you and you can look at a pie chart and it says, okay, housing, food, bills, whatever. But if you don't have an app like that, then you can do this manually. You can just download. I recommend people 3 months worth of your expenses. So you can take, if you use a credit card or multiple credit cards, you need to take 3 months of statements, your bank account, anywhere that you spend money, and just look at that. And you can either, if you're old school and you want to do pen and paper, highlighters, right? You can choose different colors, highlight the different types of expenses you have. Or if you're techie, you want to put it in a spreadsheet, that's also great. But really what you want to come to is you want to understand, okay, how much money comes in? That's usually fairly easy to figure out. If you're employed, it's your income, your salary, your paycheck, whatever. If you're a business owner, it might be a bit more fluctuating, but at least get a sense of what your average income is. And then your expenses and which ones of those are the same every month and which ones change, right? Like groceries, gifts, entertainment, travel, those are usually changing every single month. But really, you need to know what those things are. Everyone does, not just parents. And
Yeah.
then I think we never did this ourselves, but how much does it cost to have a child? Like most people don't know, right? Like,
Too much.
okay, in the first year, you've got diapers, you've got
Yeah.
baby formula, you've got potentially you need a few gadgets and strollers and all those things, which you
Mhm.
probably get ahead of time. I did have a colleague look up some numbers and what she found was the best estimate was like 10 to 15 grand per year per child. So not necessarily when they're a baby, but like when they get a bit older, they're eating a
Yeah.
lot of food, blah, blah, blah. Right.
A lot of food. We go through like a loaf of bread and a bunch of bananas a day in my house.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So, yeah. So I think that is a foundational piece, Sarah, just to understand
Yeah.
your cash flow. And then what is going to change when baby arrives. That's also really helpful to know.
Yeah.
And then I've got a kind of a checklist of that's step one.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then there's four more things that I think are super important.
Okay.
Something that I find really interesting with parents is that we obviously love our children so much and we prioritize their needs sometimes above and beyond our own. And so that can look like, from a financial planning perspective, that can look like the parents want to set up an RESP for their child, so a registered education
Yeah.
savings plan, but they haven't even set up their own retirement savings account. Like they don't have RRSPs or TFSAs. Those are accounts we commonly use to save for our own retirement.
Mhm.
And so I always have to have the conversation. I love that you want to save for your child's education, but let's also make sure that
Yeah.
you can retire. Otherwise, you're going to have to hope that your child can support you. And
Yeah.
so I think that sitting down with somebody, could be myself, could be another, if you have a financial advisor, planner that you like already, to think about your own future and your own retirement
Mhm.
and what do you need to do to be prepared for that. And then, of course, we'd love to also set up things like a registered education savings plan. And if there's brand new parents on here listening that don't know what that is, that's essentially a program where you can save some money, you get it invested. The government does a 20% match. So
That's
for everything,
great. Yeah.
yeah, everything that you put in, they're going to match the 20% of that up to about $2,500 a year. There's also some additional support if you're in a lower income bracket as a family. And there's a one-time BC training grant that all children get if they have an RESP open between the ages of 6 and 8. That's $1,200. So it's worth it to open an RESP, even if you can't put a lot of money into it, just to be able to get those grants and things.
Yeah, and I have a question about we have RSPs for our kids, so
Yeah.
check.
Makes
My
sense.
father-in-law did that. Is there a benefit to starting it earlier? Yeah.
In any investing scenario. So
Yeah.
whether we're talking about like saving for retirement or saving for education or anything, the sooner you start, the better because the power of compound interest.
Mhm.
This
Mhm.
is something I always sit down and teach clients. Like in our very first meeting, I go through the power of compound interest. And there's a little trick you can use called the rule of 72. If you take 72 divided by your rate of return, it tells you how many years it takes for the money to double. And so when we run different scenarios, like a 4% rate of return versus a 6% versus an 8% rate of return, the impact is really big. And time is also the biggest factor in how much our money can grow. So if you start your child's RESP when they're a baby,
Mhm.
that gives you almost 18 years
Mm.
for money to grow and compound over the time period that you're raising them basically before they're ready to go to school. So I absolutely starting as early as possible. Even if you can only put 20 bucks, 25 bucks a month in or something,
Yeah.
that's going to go a long way if you can start as early as possible.
And then if you can't start early, so say your kids are a bit older, there's still benefits to opening one, right? Say your kid's 5 or 10.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely still benefit. You do usually get the previous year's contribution. It's not really contribution room, it's just the government matching. So
Mhm.
if you haven't put in the previous year, then let's say you hadn't put any in and then you started at age 5 for the child and you're able to put 5 grand in, or I'm sorry, the math, that isn't the correct math, but basically you're able to put in enough so that the government will match the 20%
Oh,
for
yeah.
2 years. That's what they'll allow you to do, but you don't get the previous year's matching, basically.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
can't just dump 20,000 all at once and get the matching, if you know what I mean.
Yes. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Yeah. And I think it's really helpful to know. And then the other thing is that my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's for your discretion. It's not exclusively for post secondary. It doesn't have to be university, right? It could be college, it could be trade school. Is that
Yeah.
correct? Yeah.
That is such a good question. Yeah, it does need to be a recognized, post-secondary
Okay.
education, whether that is college or university or whatever. They definitely allow different trades programs and things, but it does have to be education based.
Yeah.
And that's why I also educate clients on some other options because what if
Mhm.
your child doesn't want to go to university?
Mhm.
Or college even. I always joke, I'm like, nowadays they could just be a social media influencer or who knows
Oh
what,
my
right?
gosh, right? Oh my
There's
gosh.
this
Unrelated, but I was watching Selling Sunset last night. Don't judge me. And there was this 20-year-old Canadian social media TikTok guy buying like a bajillion-dollar house. And I'm like, what is happening in the world, Amy?
wild. So crazy. And there's a young guy in our office just got his financial license. He's 20.
Wow.
I'm so excited for him. He's like such a go-getter
Yeah.
and he's starting his career in financial services. He just had to take our course, which is, I don't know, $1,000. You get licensed. You don't have to study for 4 years, but he has a very high earning
Yeah.
potential if he sticks with it in this industry. There's so many options.
Yeah.
What will happen with the RESP though is if it doesn't get used for education,
Mhm.
the government will take back their contributions. So
Yeah.
those matching contributions will be clawed back. You
Yeah.
can roll it into like your RSP or whatever. So you can keep the money that's
Yeah.
there tax sheltered. But yeah, it's really intended for education.
Yeah. But that's good to know that because who knows, we don't know we can't predict the future, but if our children decide not to pursue a post-secondary education that will qualify for, then you could still roll that into your RESPs. It's not like money lost or,
Yeah.
yeah.
And another thing we can tell clients about is like if you have more than one child, we can do a family plan. So
Mhm.
then it's like all the kids are named as beneficiaries and you just pool the money into one account and then maybe a couple of the kids go to school but one of them doesn't or whatever however that works out, but you just have a family plan
Yeah.
so it's all in one place.
Amazing.
Hey, Sarah,
Yes, Alicia.
did you have any problems with newborn sleep?
Oh my gosh, I sure did, especially with my first.
Me too. I wish I'd known more about what to expect going into it.
I know, and I wish that I had known to create a sleep plan with my partner.
I know. How can you support each other to get the sleep that you need while supporting your little baby?
Totally.
So guess what, guys? That's why we created the Newborn Sleep 101 course. In this course, we discuss what does newborn sleep look like and how can we help support that sweet little baby to become the best sleeper they can.
While also supporting you and your partner as you navigate this complex, sleep-deprived time.
We talk about how to set up your nursery or your bedroom to optimize both your sleep and your newborn sleeps. And we also start talking about how you can start implementing routines and schedules into your day and your newborn so by the time they're 3 or 4 months, it's well established. Because guess what? That's when they start to really need it.
If you're interested in learning more, head to our website, www.shefoundhealth.com/courses.
We hope that you get better sleep than we did.
Okay, so we've talked about know your numbers,
Yeah. So
Talked
know
about-
your numbers.
RESPs.
And
Perfect.
and the second one on my checklist is that planning for your own retirement
Yes.
as well as your child's future education. And again, there's so many people nowadays that are doing their own investing, which I think is awesome. If you have if you have the desire, the willpower, the time, the motivation to do your own investing, you're going to come out ahead in terms of what rates of return you can get potentially. However, what I think people may not have the knowledge on is like what makes the most sense for your situation. Is it investing in RRSPs? Is it investing in TFSAs? Is it investing in utilizing other types of investment accounts it's all about your type of income and your tax bracket and all these other factors. So that's where a professional can be super helpful in just making that overall plan. That's the second thing on my checklist. Oh, this one's really important. So applying for the child and family benefits.
Okay. Say more about that.
Yes. So the CCB program. So it's pretty quick and easy to apply online. It's a government program. So all parents get a benefit monthly per child. The amount of benefit that you get is dependent on your income. So here's the thing that I think not everybody realizes. You need to be up to date on your tax filings because they will base your CCP benefit on your previous year's income. And if you haven't filed your taxes, they won't send you any money because they don't know what your income is. So definitely being up to date on your taxes and then just applying for that Canada Child Benefit online. And then usually they pay the money into the mother's account. And again, the amount depends on your income. So higher income, you get a lower amount. Lower income households will receive a higher benefit.
And that's national, correct? Across the country?
Yeah, across the country. Yeah.
And do you know how long that parents get access to that benefit? Do you know? I don't know much about it. Maybe-
Yeah. And when you're higher income, it's like either minimal or maybe even nothing. I'm not sure. Ours is pretty small, but we do still get something, which I just allocate into, the RESP or the other investments we're doing for our son. That's a really good question. I believe it's going to be till it's either 16, 17 or 18, somewhere in that range. Okay. I think 18, but.
Yeah. So it's significant, right?
Yeah. And I know the odd person that's, I'm just really behind on my taxes. I haven't filed for 3 years. And I'm like, oh my God, get that done.
Yeah. Because when you think about that you might have to pay some taxes, but then the money that you'll get in returns.
Yeah. It's
and
true.
all the great things we get through our taxpayer dollars.
Yeah.
Smiling.
Healthcare. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the Canadian.
Yeah. So it's called the Canada Child Benefit, CCB.
Okay. We'll put the link in the show notes for folks.
Yeah, definitely. It's a tax-free monthly payment made to eligible families. And the main takeaway on that is just make sure that your tax filings are up to date.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And so that's the first three things. Okay. The fourth thing on my checklist is life insurance. And this is a big one. I don't think my parents ever even had it, but my parents lived in the woods practically in a cabin. So they're not maybe the best example. But the deal with life insurance is, and a lot of parents may already have it, right? When you buy a home, you have options. If you have a mortgage, they're going to offer you mortgage insurance or creditor insurance, which actually isn't the best product. I would always recommend that you get your own personally owned life insurance product. There's a lot of reasons to that. But if you are in the situation where you haven't actually taken out any life insurance yet, or if it's been a long time since you took out life insurance, it would be a good thing to review because you now have this beautiful child, this dependent who needs your support for the next probably 20, maybe even 25 years.
Longer. No, right? I still get
they might be living at home until they're 30.
Emotional support.
So life insurance is really important and it doesn't have to be overly expensive. There's a lot of options. Ideally, you sit down with an insurance. This is what I do, right? Is help people understand and navigate their options because there's term insurance, there's permanent insurance. Sometimes you can do a combination of both. You want to just make sure that you have enough protection that if something were to happen to you, even if you're the stay-home parent, and this I think is a misconception for a lot of people, is that the person who's earning the income needs the life insurance, but the person who might be looking after the kids
Mm-hmm.
is also highly valuable to the household. And if they weren't around, someone else is going to have to take care of the kids, right? So there's incredible value, even if it may not be dollars coming into the household from each partner in the relationship. So life insurance. Now, here's another little sneaky thing, not sneaky, but a lot of people don't know this, is that you can actually apply for insurance for your kids. So I didn't know this at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when we were sitting down and our baby was 6 months old, we found out, and it was really interesting for us too, because as business owners, my husband's business is incorporated. We learned that you can also use life insurance as an investment account. You can hold it within your corporation. You can tax shelter money in there. So you simultaneously, you are protected and insured, but you're also investing money inside of a tax sheltered account. You can also set that up for your child. And so this is really powerful. This is actually how the wealthy create generational wealth, and how they continue to pass that wealth forward and forward through the generations is that every single baby that's born there's a life insurance policy taken out on them. And then you can use that to invest money. So we're doing both in my house. We're doing RESP and we're doing that. And we're investing inside of a life insurance policy. Reason being it's tax sheltered. And then the cash value inside the policy ultimately will help our son in whatever way. He might use it to, maybe it helps him with a down payment on his first home. Maybe it helps him start a business. Maybe it's something that he decides to just leave there until his retirement. And then we've created a multi six-figure wealth transfer through that policy. So that's super exciting. The other thing that you can do when you're getting your child qualified is you can also get them critical illness insurance.
Mm.
And it's not like it's that common, but I'm sure, well, you're in the medical field, like
Mhm.
children get
Yeah.
illnesses, right?
Yeah.
And so it just breaks my heart when I see families that are going through like a cancer diagnosis with their child or something like that. And a critical illness benefit can just provide that financial relief so that the parents can be present. They can take time off work, whatever they need to do to care for their child, or if they need to get extra special medical treatment that isn't covered or whatever that looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so important, all this stuff to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's powerful. And yeah, and I realize that some families' budgets are tight and they can't just have all these other extra things that
Mhm.
they're paying for. But if it's in the budget, if it's possible to get even just a little bit of protection in place, there's a few, you're really setting up your child for making sure that they are eligible for insurance. This is another thing that people don't realize is sometimes you come to a point where you're like, oh, I really need insurance, but oh, I have this pre-existing condition. Or I always think about, I have a boy, you have three boys, right? What if they take up
Yeah.
extreme sports or get into motocross racing or whatever? There's all these questions they ask on these insurance applications that would make it harder for them to qualify.
Yeah.
So I'm like, let's just get that sorted.
Yeah. Because once you have it, you're in.
Mhm.
They're not gonna. They can't take it away from you. If you're
Exactly. Yeah.
skydiving. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the important thing to touch on too, and this is your area of expertise, not mine, is that it's like you can do this when they're born, you can do this when they're 5, and like you said, the monthly costs can be variable, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. The cost of insurance is based upon age and gender. So boys cost a little bit more than
Yeah.
girls. And smoking status doesn't usually apply to children.
Mhm.
Hopefully not. And I have looked because I've a wide variety of families. Some people want to do this when they're baby. You can do it as early as 2 weeks old. Your baby is 2 weeks old and you can get them applying and getting qualified. You can also do it when I've done some that are like, 5 or 6, and then some that are teenagers almost. But the parents want to get that done because, who knows? Maybe your teenager tries smoking or whatever. Like you don't know what they're going to get into, but these types of things can be put in place ahead of time. And the rates do depend upon age. They don't change drastically during the early years. Like a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old are probably going to, the
Mhm.
premium costs are probably going to be fairly similar, but it does start to gradually go up.
Mhm.
And when you get insurance, you can lock in the rate. So you can lock in the rate of a 5-year-old versus trying to get it when they're 25 and they're going to be
Yeah.
a lot more expensive,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So much to think about.
I know. Yeah. Okay. So that's my fourth checkbox here on my checklist is insurance. And then the last one you already mentioned, but it is preparing a will. Yeah. So not exactly a financial thing, but it is a financial thing
It
because
is. Yeah.
relates to your estate. It relates to, most importantly for parents, it is about who would be guardians of your child. if something happens to you, and especially if something happens to both parents.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of parents don't, I didn't know this either. All the stuff that I learned through our own journey, it was just, if you don't have a will in place, even if you have family members, there's lots of people that would happily be caregivers for your child. They essentially become, they go into the hands of the government really to figure for that to be all figured out. And so it's way cleaner. It's way easier if there's a will in place.
Yeah. And now it's not a fun conversation to have, but it's important. And who do you refer people to in terms of if they need more guidance and like looking how to make it official, like the documentation piece?
Oh yeah, it really depends on the situation. I actually have one life insurance provider that includes it in their plan. So depending if the person is getting the right type of insurance, they will get a full estate planning package with it
Oh,
for no
interesting.
extra
Yeah.
cost. That works well for most families. Most families that just have a simple, they have their income and their whatever, their regular assets, a house, whatever. It's straightforward. So particular service will give you all the documents. It's like I guess like an algorithm. It asks you questions, and
Yeah.
as you answer the questions, it builds it all for you.
Yeah.
And then you'll have your will, your medical directive, your power of attorney documents. All you have to do is sign them. And then I believe one of our product providers was training us on this. It just needs to be signed by someone who is not named in the will
Yeah.
as a
Like a
witness.
or whatever. Yeah.
And you can also go and get it notarized officially if you'd like to make it
Mm.
really official. But a will that is signed by someone who's not named in the will still count. And then if someone is in a more complex arrangement, like you have incorporated
Yes.
businesses, you have significant assets or whatever that looks like, then it is obviously a very good idea to go to a lawyer and get that done, because you just really want to make sure that everything is drafted up and worded exactly how it needs to be worded. So
Yeah.
that it's interpreted properly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we
And that
did
makes sense.
because as physicians we're incorporated. And I just realized I don't think we had updated it since we've had our third child. So we've got to.
Yes, this is the other thing. You have to keep these things up to date. Yeah. Yeah.
I know. Oh my goodness.
Adulting. I always call it
Okay.
like adulting.
Adulting. It's overwhelming. But that's why we're doing stuff like this. So people have the information they need. And like you said, a lot of this stuff can be done in advance, right? Like knowing your cash flow, you can do that in advance. Even if you're even if you're just starting to think about having a family, getting your life insurance, getting a will, those are all the things that you can do even before you have children. And then you just modify it and update it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I always tell people if there's even a remote chance that they want to own a home or have children, they should get their insurance just as soon as they possibly can, because they'll be cheaper and you're making sure that you can get covered, because sometimes it's harder to get coverage later on.
It's so crazy. I remember like when I was in medical school, like near the end, like in our fourth year, and they're trying to teach you about life. And we had these talks about this kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, whatever. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm all fine now. But
Yeah.
it's so hard. So if you're young and you think this doesn't apply to you, Aimee and I encourage you to pay attention.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah. I know.
right.
I had one, I sat down with a financial advisor when I was in my mid 20s, and I know I made a few good choices. A few things didn't. I pulled my RSPs to do something. I can't remember what, and had to start over. But
I love that you can't even remember what, right?
yeah. Actually, no, I do remember. It's embarrassing. But the truth is I paid off debt. I had racked up credit card debt anyways. Like,
Yeah.
we all come into this chapter of our lives where we're like, okay, now I understand what I need to do and I'm going to do better. But the point is, this guy did suggest that I get some critical illness insurance. And honestly, I'm very grateful for that guy, because I have a policy now that I got when I was 26, and my premiums are so low compared to if I tried to get it now. I have a full return of premium. So if I don't use it ever, I'm going to get all that money back. So to me,
That's amazing, right?
Yeah.
It's just another investment.
Yeah.
Like, knock
It'd
wood.
be sitting there and my plan is to not get sick and never use it. So I'll just grab that money later on when I've made it through the the dangerous years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Can you go through just quickly again, touch on the top 5? You had 5 things on your checklist, right?
Yes. And we did them in slightly different order, but yes, understanding your monthly cash flow, and then getting a plan together for your own retirement. Your own is really important. And then you can add on to that with things like RESPs. So the topic here is start investing early. The earlier, the better. The third one is applying for the child benefit,
Yes.
CCD. The fourth is applying for life insurance and potentially maybe critical illness insurance. And then the fifth one, and considering that for your kids as well,
Mhm.
but definitely get it for yourself, for the parents. And then the fifth one is getting your will done.
Yeah. You had mentioned, like, very openly, thank you for sharing. Everyone has debt at some point in their life. And like what support someone like yourself could offer someone coming in who wants to have a child but understands they're expensive and they have debt and like I'm shifting that mindset around debt.
Oh, that is such a good question. I'm glad you brought that up because it's very common. The vast majority of Canadians have some kind of debt right now. And I'm not even talking about like a mortgage. Like most people, you own a home, you have a
Oh yeah.
mortgage. A lot of people have other types of debt. And we talk a lot about it because one of our missions, and I really nail it down to, we want to help you eliminate debt. We want to help you protect your income. And then we want to help you grow and build wealth. That's what I do in a nutshell.
Mhm.
And so the debt piece is understanding the types of debt you have, the interest rates on the debt, the term or the time period, things like that, the monthly payments, and then figuring out what strategy is going to make sense. So there's a
Mhm.
couple of different angles that we can take with debt. If someone's a homeowner
Mhm.
and they have equity in their home, sometimes there's an opportunity to use some of that equity to pay off higher interest debt. That was a really great strategy a couple of years ago when the
Yeah.
interest rates were lower,
Yeah.
because you could have your mortgage at 2% and you could pay off your 8 or 10% line of credit or your 20% credit card. And then you could just end up having a bigger mortgage or a home equity line of credit at a much lower interest rate. So that was a strategy we used to use a lot. It's a little bit less appealing now because mortgage rates are so high.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Another thing is just looking at what access people have to what types of credit. And then is it possible, say someone has they have access to a line of credit, but they're carrying a balance on a credit card. The line of credit is a lower interest rate. So we can just move ideally the balance on the credit card onto a lower interest rate line of credit, those types of things. Sometimes even like a balance transfer situation. Credit cards sometimes offer those. You can do like a 0% balance transfer and then you can pay that down. And that's a strategy I've used personally in the past, is just knocking down a debt on a credit card just by transferring over a balance. And then there's another strategy that in some cases is the right route to go, and that's called a consumer proposal. And that's actually where you take your unsecured debt. It's typically credit card debt, line of credit debt. It's unsecured, meaning there's no asset attached to it. So it
Mhm.
doesn't work when it's like a vehicle loan and you still have the vehicle because that loan is attached to the vehicle. But when you have unsecured, like just credit card lines of credit, it works great. You can even bundle in student loan debt if you have been 7 years out of school. And what it is basically, I refer these out. I don't do this, but it can really help someone if they feel like they've gotten in over their head and they're like, I don't know how I'm ever going to get out of this.
Mhm.
And it just bundles all your debt. You put a plan together. There's a service called 4 Pillars that supports people through this, and they do a really phenomenal job. And then you have a locked in monthly payment for a certain time period. It's often 5 years. And once that's paid off, you're done. And it does impact your credit score, but by working with them, especially 4 Pillars, they help you to rebuild your credit. So they guide you through every single step to take to make sure that when you come out of that, you have a decent credit score. You can still go and buy a home or do these other things that you might want
Yeah.
to do. But yeah, it really just depends on how much debt it is and what other circumstances are there. Certainly, I just feel like the mental stress of debt can really weigh on people, and it's just money. And I'm super humble to say I've been in debt a couple of times. I've managed to pay it off. I've figured out ways, and it's a mindset thing more than anything. But really, there are options out there. And I would just encourage people, don't be embarrassed. I always wish I'd gotten help sooner. I wish I'd talked to somebody about it and
Mhm.
not been so embarrassed and just dealt with it instead of just letting it sit there and fester and be like, I'm
And
ignoring you.
accumulate more interest, right? Yeah.
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 Yeah. So
Amazing. Oh my gosh. I'm pretty sure people are going to listen to this episode multiple times
they
because
might
there's
have to. Yeah.
so much information in it. So if folks are interested, you have a checklist, right? Like the things we went through that we're going to be
Yeah.
able to link in the
Yeah.
down.
Totally. I'll make sure
Okay.
that you have a link for that. It's just going to give you those reminders. We'll also like links to things like getting the child tax
Yeah.
benefit or the
Yeah.
child. Yeah. So those will be linked for people.
And then if people want to get in touch with you, how can they find you and how can you help them?
Yeah. Thank you. I'm on Instagram. I hang out there quite a bit. My handle is at Be Free Aimee, and it's AIMEE. And then we are starting another account that's going to be my team and I, called at Be Free Financial Team. So I've helped a few other people get licensed. We have, at the moment, it's a squad of all women, and we're licensed across so far BC, Alberta, and Ontario, looking to get kind of agents into all the provinces.
Yeah.
So if people are listening to this and they're across the country, like that doesn't mean we can't help you. I meet all the clients that I talk to primarily on Zoom, although I do have an office in Victoria. So if someone's local, you want to come face to face, I always love that. But primarily we meet on Zoom and it's always free. That's the other thing too. So I'm a broker. So I don't charge people for my time, which is really nice, especially with young families. Like you don't have to pay anything out of pocket just to have a conversation. See if there's any way I can help. I always provide financial education and make you understanding the options so that you can just make an informed decision. So yeah, you can find me on Instagram. I'll make sure that you have links for like people to book in my calendar if they want to.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
We'll put those in the show notes.
Awesome.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Aimee. This has been so great. And I feel like we could do a whole other podcast, just like diving deeper into some of these questions that people had. So we'll have to connect
Happy
again.
to chat anytime.
Awesome. Thanks, Aimee.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to check out our website at www.shefoundhealth.ca and to sign up for our community for weekly bump blasts. Make sure to check us out on Instagram or Facebook at she.found.motherhood and head on over to your favorite podcast app and leave a review and a 5-star rating. If you enjoyed this podcast, take a pic of yourself listening to it and share it on social. Make sure to tag us on it so we know to keep making them.